Hi everyone, and welcome to Preparing for Launch, where we chat about the space sector through entertainment, education, advice, and insight. Today we have Jonathan O'Callaghan here to speak about science journalism. Jonathan is a freelance space and science journalist based in London. His work appears in the New York Times, Scientific American, Nature, New Scientist, Forbes, Wired, and a variety of other publications. You will also occasionally find him on TV or radio discussing the latest happenings in space for outlets such as the BBC.
Time is X minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
When did you first become interested in science or space?
Quite a while ago, I studied physics and astrophysics at university. So I've always had a space interest. A long time really, a lot of years. I think I went to go see a space shuttle when I was 12 or 13 in Florida. Didn't see the launch, but saw it on the pad, and that was very cool. So yeah, I've always kind of had a space side that I've always been waiting to use, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. So what does your role involve? Like, what does an average workday look like?
It's pretty varied. It can go between not much at all or a lot of interviews and a lot of writing. It really depends who I'm writing for and what I'm doing. So as an example for this week, on Tuesday this week, I spent the entire day reading through 1,000 abstracts of science papers to find stories, which took all of the day, which I then pitched out on a few today and a few yesterday. But if I've got a story on the go, then I'll be doing interviews during the day first. A lot of them are with people in America, so I'll normally do interviews to quite late at night, and then when I'm writing the story, I'll just sit down and write for a few hours and then edit. It's pretty different every day.
There is. How long does it take you to kind of, from the minute you start one piece to publishing it? What's that duration like?
Yeah, it can change. So let's say for New Scientist, I do a lot of stories that are 300 words, so pretty short. So that can be, I'll do an interview for maybe 20 to 30 minutes, and they normally just want one interview for the short stories. So I'll do an interview for 20 to 30 minutes, then it maybe take me an hour or two to write the story. So that could be, that's 2 or 3 hours for that small story. Then a big story, I'm working on a big feature for Scientific American at the moment, which is 1,500 words. 1,500 words. And that will probably take me 20 to 30 hours. I'll probably do maybe 5 to 10 interviews-ish, and each will be about half an hour. So whatever that adds up to. And then I'll have to go through I use an AI transcriber called Otter, which transcribes all my interviews. So I'll go through and pick out all the stuff that are good quotes and things that I'm interested in. And then my writing process is a bit different to other people maybe, but I tend to just write out a big splurge of everything that I remember, and then I go back and fill in the gaps essentially. So
that's what I do too. I have my main points, and then I have my main points, and then I go back and make it all like fancy language and actually like coherent. I just can't write. I can't just like, in exams you have to just kind of make sure you're saying all the facts, and then you're also writing eloquently. I can't do that when I'm writing for reports or pieces. I just need to like have what I'm going to say and then make it all like clean. But how do you make sure you don't kind of like obsess over one piece and spend like too long on it? Because I find that I can't stop with an article, because it never is going to be perfect. It's always can be better. But how do you just kind of say, okay, this is done. Like, I'm not looking at it again.
Well, one just comes with experience. I know what my editors want. So like when I've written something and I think it's good, I'm like, yeah, this is good. I'm going to send it. So one thing I find really helps is writing when I feel like it, which sounds weird, but like I try not to, like I obviously stick to your deadlines and don't go over your deadline and write to the word count you've been told. But I would try and write when I can, like, it sounds a bit hippie, but like when I feel like writing. So like, for example, I might be falling asleep and suddenly I think of an amazing intro for the article. So I'll just write down my phone quickly, like the first few paragraphs of the article, or like I would have just done a few interviews and like some of it's really fresh in my mind. So I'll write like loads of it just then at that moment. So it kind of depends really. I just try not to force it too much. I try and make it as natural as possible, if that makes sense. But that varies. That's kind of for features. For the smaller stories that are like 300 to 600 words, kind of the news stories, I see them more as like a puzzle. So you get all the facts down, and then it's just a question of condensing everything down into like a small story. And that's kind of a different type of writing in itself, which is less creative and more kind of, you just need to be able to turn a paragraph into a sentence quite well, which can be tricky.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, cutting down words is my favorite thing to do. I love it when someone says like, "Oh, can you help me like cut or reduce the word count?" I'm like, yes, that's so fun. Trying to have like little hacks to make it as condensed as possible. Because the worst thing is when you're reading something and you can just tell they're just waffling on just to make the word count longer. It's like, okay, come on, like we know. I think that kind of separates a lot of writing into like really good writing, kind of not so much in terms of like student papers and like the younger era. Is if they've said a lot in a short amount of time in sentences. Yeah. It's like they said a lot of things in one paragraph. I'm impressed.
My best tip for that would be just try writing a 300 word story. Like that, I think is the ultimate journalism art. Like if you can explain, like a super complex topic in 300 words and don't go a word over, that's like, I think that's really, that's like a unique art. It's very different to writing something that's 1,000 words or more, where you're filling space and you're rambling and being a bit more fluent with your language. Trying to like, if you could learn to write that short and succinctly, it's super useful for writing longer things in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because it's the worst thing is when you have so much to say and it's like, the word count. Can you tell us about your route to becoming a space journalist, where you started like right after university until now?
So in 2010, I went and worked for a small magazine publishing company in Bournemouth. Yeah. It was called Imagine Publishing. I worked for a science magazine there called How It Works. And after I was there for about a year or two, they started a space magazine called All About Space that I was on a small skeleton team with about just 3 of us, I think, which is really fun. Working in print, it was really enjoyable. Then in 2013, for better or worse, I went to work for the Daily Mail as a science and tech correspondent. I didn't actually have any newsroom experience or like experience writing quick news stories or working in like a busy environment. Daily Mail had a job going, so I thought I'd give it a go. And yeah, it turned out to be super useful. People can famously not manage there very long because it's quite stressful.
Yeah, fair enough.
I stayed for 15 months before I left, but it was really. I don't agree with a lot of the other stuff, but the science writing there was very useful. It taught me a lot of things about how to write quickly and succinctly, and they let me cover space stories for a national newspaper, which is quite fun.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, and then I worked for a Facebook social media buzz company called IFL Science. You might have heard of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was there for 3 years. Again, did space stuff with them. A bit more sort of the virality side of things. Yeah, and then in November 2018, I went freelance because I wanted to try doing my own thing and writing for different outlets. And yeah, it's been super successful. And like last year was just awesome. I'm very, very glad I did it. So,
yeah. What was the biggest thing that you took away or learned from working with such a big publication like the Daily Mail?
Speed, writing a breaking news story with someone standing over the back of you is like so it's difficult but kind of fun. There was a story I think in I can't remember now when it was, 2014 roughly. Colin Pillinger, he was a UK scientist. He was behind the Eagle 2 mission to Mars. He died in 2014, and my editor asked me to write the breaking news story that he had just died. But I didn't actually know that much about him. So I had to very, very quickly, in minutes, like research everything about him, write a story, while my editor was like standing over my shoulder telling me to change this bit in the headline or this. I remember that really well. That was like a really good experience of learning to write super quick copy that was like accurate and yeah, it was useful. So yeah, and just those sort of experiences of learning to write really quick stories that were accurate, that were fact checked, that had the right stuff in the right quotes. That was a really useful skill to learn. I think that's really helped. Now I can turn around a story pretty quickly, and I think that's a very useful freelance skill to have.
What's your favorite thing about being freelance?
Just the freedom, I think, really. It's just awesome being able to take time off, do other things. We're expecting a baby in 6 weeks now, which is very exciting. And I'm looking forward to just, being able to be home all the time and look after her. It's going to be fun.
That's really fun.
Yeah, the freedom is super fun, but also the one thing I found from writing jobs is often you'll have to write things you don't really want to write alongside the kind of fun stuff. But freelance, you can just always write what you want. When I started out, it was a bit different. I was having to take a lot of things that I wasn't that keen on, but now I can just super focus on space stuff that's cool. I pitch stuff, people ask me to write stuff, and yeah, it's really fun.
I think it's what you were saying before about how sometimes you're not in the mood to write. With creative stuff like writing, it's so hard to have a 9-to-5 job. I feel like just writing all day long. Sometimes you just can't. It's not something you kind of math, something like that, you can just kind of do all the time. But when it's writing, it's just if you're not in the mood and the mindset for it, you just can't do it. I just can't write when I'm not in the mindset for writing. I just can't do it.
But that's half the fun of being freelance. You can write when it feels better. And you
can make a schedule as well. What about past jobs before, any jobs you've had before in just your life? How does that compare to journalism in terms of just enjoying it and creative and just overall?
I probably didn't have too much to add. My jobs before I became a journalist 10 years ago were not super related. I worked in customer relations. I worked in a call center. Actually, saying that, I worked in a call center, and that made me get over my fear of talking to people on phones. A lot of people I know a lot of people starting out in journalism hate calling people up for interviews, hate doing interviews, hate cold calling people. I know that's a big fear for new journalists. Working in a call center definitely helped me and having to speak to 100 people a day. It helped a bit with speaking to some scientists in University of Arizona who's never heard it. You're some plucky journalist trying to write a story. So yeah.
That makes sense. Kind of confidence, kind of just getting on the call, being hello, I'm this and this, kind of about this. Even the podcast now, I think this is my 12th recording, and the first one I was a mess. It was not okay in that one. So now it's kind of it's my 12th one. I can kind of figure out how to do it. What was the most challenging part of your job? Sorry. And what is the best part? It's positive and negative.
Let me think. The challenging sides, although I do find this fun, can be how complex some things are and how difficult it is to given, because I write about space almost entirely, but it is such a broad range of things. I write about rocket launches, and I write about particle physics, and I just did a story for New Scientist about Bose-Einstein condensates, which is a fifth state of matter which they've made on the International Space Station. But I'm not an expert in Bose-Einstein condensate, so finding out enough information about that to do a story can be tricky. It can be really hard sometimes. And if you submit a story and people need more information on something, it can sometimes be really hard to know enough about the subject to make sure you're not getting anything wrong. So I don't really do this, but some people will send parts or bits of their story to researchers and get them to help them out with some fact checking and things. I occasionally check a few things, but that's a super scary moment when the article has been published and you've just written a super complicated topic, and the people you've interviewed read the story, and you're oh God, I hope everything was right. So yeah, complex topics is tricky.
What about the best then, on the positive side?
I just personally love writing. It's really fun crafting stories about things. Like, I really enjoy it. And it's really fun just to read and publish your stuff when it's out there. I think it's really cool. I really enjoy just weaving together stuff, different tales, different articles. Yeah, I love that side of things.
Is there a quote unquote best way to communicate science through media or space in this case?
What do you mean?
Like, do you think it's the best way to do like articles or podcasts or television, or what's the best way to kind of get people excited about science?
It's a tricky question.
Yeah.
I guess for the most part, I would say articles are more geared towards people that are already interested in space.
Yeah, true.
I think people that read space articles are people that have a passing interest. I mean, people aren't going to read my Bose-Einstein condensate story.
Yeah.
I think never heard of that before. But
Yeah.
I think, for like a non-space person, probably social media's where they're going to get the most of it from, like a GIF or something on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or something. That's probably where the majority of people get that sort of stuff. I mean, we had a lot of the Starlink stuff in the UK last few weeks when it was super sunny and all of the satellites were going overhead. And I know a lot of people were sharing stuff on like WhatsApp and Twitter and Facebook. So yeah, probably more social side of things for non-space people.
That's a good point, actually, about how the younger generation now, they might be inspired and get into science and technology or space through social media. Because remember, I got into science. I don't even remember actually with like astronomy. I was like, for as long as I can remember, I've been into astronomy. I just don't remember like the time where I was interested in it. So that's a really bad answer for me. But I was really interested in space flight. That's kind of like Apollo 13, that movie, and all the media around that kind of transformed my love for astronomy into space flight. So that was a movie. So that, yeah, you're right. Like, no 10-year-old kid is going to read like a PhD report journal. So
No.
media really is what inspires them, because how would they ever find out about astronauts and space flight if it wasn't for TV, films, social media. So I guess, the social media is a bigger part to play in kind of advertising science and STEM than we think it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think people like, I don't know if you follow people like the Everyday Astronaut on YouTube and people like that who do famous YouTube channels. But the people who watch those, they definitely have a reach to the non-space side of things. But most of the people that watch that are probably already space fans, people who like astronomy. So if you're trying to break to the people that don't follow that stuff normally, then it is the kind of social media channels.
Yeah, that's a good point. How does talking about space differ from talking about the rest of science? Because I know like, everyone kind of thinks that space is at least kind of cool, but why not think like physics is as cool as I would think it would be?
I find space a pretty easy sell.
Yeah.
I think people are pretty interested in, if I meet someone at like a party and I say I'm a science journalist, they'll be like, oh, that's like kind of interesting.
Yeah.
If I say I'm a space journalist, they'll be like, oh my God, like, what do you think about that? Like, they always talk about it. People love space. Like, everyone knows something about space. Everyone knows that like Jupiter's really big, or like Elon Musk launched loads of satellites, or there was like a supernova. Like, everyone knows something and they want to check up, or people always want to know like, are there aliens, or how do people use the toilet in space? I think people are instantly fascinated by space. I think it's a really easy sell compared to the other sciences.
Yeah, that's a really good point. No one's gonna. It's the one thing that kind of cross into the political field as well, and personal, and just overall, just I don't know, life. Like, everyone was watching the launch. My friends who are doing like English uni, like they watched the launch a couple weeks ago, and everyone. It kind of involves everyone. Space flight kind of everyone knows about it. It's not like the newest like chemistry discovery. I guess like coronavirus vaccines, kind of what everyone's talking about right now. But besides that, spaceflight is so much more ingrained into society than other sciences are.
Yeah, well, kind of like, and the SpaceX launch a couple weeks ago, that was
it's
awesome.
Like commercialized, like celebrity.
I mean, that was like, I had people messaging me who like, I've never spoken to them about space before, and they're like, oh my God, how do I watch it? Like, what's going on? How long are they out for and stuff like that. But on the other side, that's not, humans have been launching to space continuously for the last 20, 30 years. Like, people have never watched a Soyuz launch. No one's ever messaged me when they're launching on the Soyuz rocket and they're like, hey, these Russians are launching, how is this? So like, what was it about the SpaceX launch that everyone was so excited? Obviously it was American and a bit more kind of westernized, but I don't know, I can't really, like, that's kind of interesting to me that these people, everyone's so interested in the SpaceX launch, but no one's ever group watched like like the Expedition 53 launch in like 2016 or something. Like,
That's such a good point, because it wasn't like many people have gone to the ISS before. It wasn't the first batch, you know?
Yeah, 600 people have been to space.
Yeah,
So
so it's not like those two are the first ever to go to the ISS, but yeah, it has the most, from what I can remember, the most international recognition.
yeah,
So yeah, it's a good point, actually.
SpaceX factor, Elon Musk factor. Those are both big things, I would say.
Yeah,
And they rode to the pad and Tesla cars. It's all like very cool and slick and white
yeah.
and stuff. And yeah.
But yeah, it's a really good point to make though about how it's not just them. Like if you're gonna watch one launch, like there's more, and there have been more in the past.
I mean, there's three launches tomorrow. Is anyone going to watch any of those who would have watched the Crew Dragon launch? Like,
yeah, true.
20,000 of us. That's it.
That's a good point. I won't take away from this today. I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna like bring that up again to people, because thank you. It's a really good point I need to make to people. So how can people get involved with journalism as a hobby if they are a student or have a full-time job and kind of want to start going into it part-time?
Science, like, how did you get into science journalism?
Yeah, if you're like, I don't know, 35 right now, work in a bank, and you want to be a journalist, what do you do? How do you start going into that?
That is a
Or me, it's the easier situation. Me, who's like 19-year-old first-year student, wants to go into journalism. What do I do?
okay. Well, are we talking specifically about space journalism or science?
Yeah, let's make it space journalism, because that's my favorite.
I guess the first thing you would do is try and look for internships at different publications. A lot of places have those, and I know a lot are very well regarded. So definitely go down that route. I guess you would want to make sure you're reading up on everything, reading what other people are doing, like checking up within your specialism field, seeing what the latest news and research is, and even try your hand at pitching out stories. If you can find good enough stories, find good outlets. Most websites have pretty in-depth pitching guidelines online. You can very easily start sending up pitches, even if you don't get accepted, just to build a rapport with editors that you then come back to. I mean, one of the editors I work with, I first contacted him like 5 to 8 years ago about something random, and he's now one of like my best editors. So
Oh wow.
yeah, it can like just like random connections can really help like build a contact base for when you eventually go into it like full time.
Oh sweet. Yeah, I find it hard to get like work experience, and well, now obviously my one journalism work experience summer was canceled because there's something going on in the world right now, the virus. But I find it hard to kind of get experience outside of a typical like journalism work experience schemes that are just kind of, okay, let's get like 20 students who want to like intern at the BBC. I find it's really hard to like find those. So
yeah, that is true.
Search around.
There's a lot of outlets now where you can write. I know it's like not what any new journalist wants to hear, but like Medium things where you can write for free, which is not great, but it's a good way to practice writing and a good way to get like articles out in the public domain that people can read. You can put into like a portfolio or something.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, also about that Squarespace portfolio, you know, I'm making mine now.
One other tip as well is to look at like a lot of work I've had in the past has come from looking in random places like newsstands, like flick through magazines and newsstands, see who has like science sections, look for like the masthead, see who is like the editors at different magazines, and just like get in touch with people. I've like my first job in 2010, how it works was for me going to a newsstand and I was like, hey, what's this magazine? And I read it and I was like, hey, I wonder if they have any jobs. And I looked online, they had a job and I applied. So like, yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, just pick up a magazine or a newspaper and see like who's doing what. And
just by practice. What is the favorite article that you've written? And I'll link it in the description box.
Okay, I've got two. One, so last year I was doing a lot of reporting on Starlink, and this year, so SpaceX's mega constellation of satellites that they're kind of launching into space, and they're potentially posing a lot of problems for space junk and astronomy. And I think in October, I did a big feature for Scientific American called The Risky Rush for Mega Constellations. And that was just kind of a big explainer on everything, but that was a lot of fun to go through. I enjoyed getting that all together. It's quite fun. Actually, hold on. No, I'm not going to say that article. The actual favorite article I wrote was in January this year, which was building on that article. This student at a law university in America contacted me about Starlink and said that he thought the approval of it may have been in breach of US government environmental law. And he told me about that in November last year, and I had it back and forth with him. And then I pitched it to Scientific American, they picked it up, and yeah, I worked on that for like a couple of months. That was awesome. That was so fun. And that article has since spawned quite a lot of discussion in American law about whether this is legal. I know there's a few law firms looking into whether these satellites are legal in the first place. There's been some congressional discussion and things. So yeah, that article spawned a lot of quite interesting legal and complex issues.
That's insane.
That was a really, really fun article. The guy was called Ramon Ryan. Yeah, that was really, really fun to research and put together. I remember when he first told me about it, I was like, this is such a good article. I need to
yeah, sorry, get on that.
This guy, it's really fun. Yeah, that was really, really interesting couple of months to look into that and talk to people.
Nice. For anyone who doesn't know, Starlink is basically like a satellite kind of constellation constructed by SpaceX for internet access, basically.
Yeah, and they currently in total across all satellites orbiting Earth, there are 2,000 active satellites, and Starlink wants to launch up to 42,000. So a big increase.
Whoa. Yeah. If I had one chance to write something for a major scientific media output, I'd write about space debris and space sustainability. That's my one. If how everyone has one thing they really want to write about and just tell the world about, I'd be the space sustainability. I can't speak. And space debris. That's my one thing I really want to write about.
It's a good topic. I am in contact with a lot of space debris companies, Astroscale.
Oh yeah.
The others remove debris, things like that. Yeah, there's some big stuff happening there. That's a good topic.
I have an Astroscale sticker on my laptop right now. So, do you think it is important to target everyone or just scientists in your articles, or does it depend on the article? Kind of, I guess.
I always write for everyone.
Yeah.
I definitely write science for a mainstream audience. Yeah, every article I write is with kind of the layman in mind. You always write things with an explanation of every term, every acronym, everything. Unless I was writing for a journal, which I don't do that. I would always write for general public. I want my niece to be able to read an article and understand every single thing in it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I remember Dallas Campbell said science is for everyone, not just scientists. And the only way you're going to do that is to make it accessible. So if I was going to read I clicked on an article when I was 12, and it was super confusing and all the acronyms weren't abbreviated and things like that, or not abbreviated, explained, I would just click off it. And it kind of just very discouraging. But when you see science media very kind of explained, simply, layperson, all that kind of stuff, it's just so much more accessible, kind of motivating, kind of will inspire that reader to go into it, and there's a little cycle. But are there any times where your audience is massively shifted, not in terms of difficulty level, but just kind of if you're writing for Science of America or Daily Mail or just a TV interview, how do you is your tone ever shifted at all, or is it always completely the same?
It stays pretty the same, I'd say. The only thing that changes is the language, how things are written. So, for example, for New Scientist, that's written in quite a factual way. Each sentence, there's not much room for conjecture, or there is in the bigger articles, but in the short news stories, it's sentence by sentence. It's a news piece. Whereas for Scientific American, that's more of the text is more kind of flowy, and there's bigger words and fancier definitions, and my editor always makes it sound way better than I've written it in the first place. So depending on that, the vocabulary changes and the tone changes, but I generally try and keep the science the same always. So I want any article I write, anyone to be able to read that and understand what's going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of that language and structure, is there a certain person or book that has kind of influenced the way that you write?
Oh, is it bad if I said no?
No, it's fine. Be honest. No, that's good. Actually, it means that you're like original and yourself. It's good.
Yeah. Obviously, I read other journalists and like other authors and stuff, but yeah, I don't really like follow anyone's style in particular.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
When you add creative input into your pieces and kind of like your, so not just saying like this happened today, and you have to bring kind of, I don't know, other aspects that go into space that aren't just like the rocket engine fuel. How do you maintain a non-biased scientific viewpoint, but also adding your personal input on it and your kind of personal belief or spin on it as well, or just other political aspects that go into it?
You mean like how do I get opinion into articles?
Yeah, basically.
Well, for the most part, I don't really.
Yeah, fair enough.
Most articles I write don't have any opinion in them. The only place I write that I do that is Forbes. I cover mostly commercial spaceflight for them, rocket launches and stuff. And there I have a bit more room to like have a bit more fun with the articles and have a bit of opinion in there.
Yeah.
But I'm normally pretty careful with, I don't kind of put my views in there. I let my interviewees talk for themselves, and I just report the facts around it.
Is it ever hard to kind of make your articles interesting and entertaining, but also you have to be like very scientific? Is there like a balance between that?
Yeah, like I would generally make sure if I'm pitching something, it is already those things.
Yeah.
People aren't going to take stories if they're not interesting. But like things can get tricky. For example, or like if I'm interested in something. So I did a story last year where it was for Scientific American. It was about solar storms, which is like a quite a widely known topic. But it was about this kind of niche piece of research that said, so everyone knows that Earth's magnetic field can flip every like what is it, like 500,000 years or something. But this new piece of research said that our magnetic field might like semi-flip every like 50,000 years. It might like, get really small and then get back up again.
Yeah.
Like huge implications for like life on Earth, and it looked like we were going through that now, and potentially there was going to be like a mini flip in 1,000 to 2,000 years, which would be like catastrophic. And for me, I found that topic like really interesting, and I kind of wrote the article, and I think I like was overselling the wrong bits, and I was kind of I was more interested in certain aspects of it than other people maybe were. So yeah, it can be a hard balance between. There's the famous phrase which is "kill your darlings," which is like get rid of the bits of the article that you think are cool.
Yeah.
Don't add anything. Like I've like chopping quotes and stuff out can just be painful sometimes, but you just have to get rid of like stuff if it doesn't work.
Just have to. So I write for the student paper, and some of the articles are really interesting. But as a first year, you obviously they make you write the articles that are the ones that no one cares about. Like, oh, we're changing like I don't know, like cleaning services for like the libraries, and I'm like, how am I gonna make this interesting? Or like, there's one where it's like the library is going to close like in half an hour earlier, and I'm like, why am I writing about this? Like, there's no one's going to care. It's like
just like a counter-ish argument. I used to write for my student paper as well, and a local paper back in the day. And yeah, sometimes the stories there can be hard sells, but with science stories, I think it's different. There's always a cool thing you can say in a science article about a topic, like finding the interesting bit in a piece of research is sometimes the most difficult part of it. Like even an article about something boring, like a new particle discovery, like there's so many easy sells of like how that was made or like how particles work, like, pushing stuff together. Like I think every science story like has an interesting angle to it. You just have to kind of dig it out sometimes.
It's so cool. I'm always sad when people aren't interested in science. And I'm like, no, this is the coolest thing. Like, don't you get it? Like, I have no one is sciencey in my family, not one. And all my friends, some of them do medicine, but like, well, I have my space friends. Everyone has their space friends. At university, I'm like, guys, this is the coolest thing. Like, this was discovered or this or that. And then just like, but I'm like, no, but it's so cool. Like, this is. So do you ever get frustrated sometimes when people aren't interested in science or just like, they don't like it?
You just got to find those stories that bridge all gaps, that cut through, and you get them now and again.
Yeah, fair enough. When science gets political, how do you maintain the kind of a political? Actually, I asked that already before. Ignore that. But what are you most excited for in the future of spaceflight?
space flight.
Yeah, we ask everyone this question. It's kind of like the generic question for everyone.
Space flight, or
yeah, human space flight.
Well, I guess the obvious answer would be SpaceX's Starship vehicle.
Yeah.
I think everyone's kind of excited about what that's going to look like, if it's going to work. They're meant to be trying an orbital flight sometime in the next few months or year. So if that works, like, that could be pretty cool. Yeah, that would probably be the main thing to be excited about at the moment. And more Crew Dragon flights. I'm kind of interested to see what they do with that. Like, already they've had several space tourists sign up. I'm quite interested to see how many go up, like what they're going to do. Are we going to go through a big like space tourism boom? Is Tom Cruise really going to space?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Do you think as space tourism advances, the role that science media has also is more important as it kind of goes to the public more?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, also we've already had space tourists. 7 space tourists have been to space between 2003 and 2009 on the Soyuz spacecraft. And like, do people care? A bit, not that much. I'd said this I was on another podcast the other day, and I said, could anyone in the general public name one space tourist? And I don't think they could. But there have been 7. So, 6 and 1 flew twice. I can't remember. So yeah, are the general public going to care about like multi-millionaires flying on a SpaceX spacecraft? I don't know, maybe because it's SpaceX, but I think people will care about Tom Cruise. But are they going to care about like X billionaire pays per seat?
The minute SpaceX is mentioned, it's like everyone's attention is like SpaceX. I'm like, guys, there's other like SpaceX has that like name brand where it's like SpaceX.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like you can't really oversell what they've done. Like, it's pretty amazing. Like, get people
I'm
like
sold.
a rocket launches, kind of get that many people doing that is very impressive.
It's insane.
Like Elon Musk and the kind of more negative side of things, like what they've done with SpaceX is super impressive.
Yeah, it's they're changing the world. It's insane.
And like SpaceX launched the commercial, and like not just commercial space flight, like the commercial space sector, like all of it is essentially from SpaceX. Like they, when they like the Falcon 1 and the Falcon 9 rocket in 2010, like they have kickstarted this whole era of commercial companies doing stuff in space. I think the quote I got the other day was that when before SpaceX was founded, or what year was it? Like in 2007, there were 0 commercial launches in America. And last year, SpaceX had 65% of all commercial launches, or something like that.
That's insane.
Some sort of stat like that. But like just the rise of like what they've done is really impressive. I definitely super pro SpaceX, but also like SpaceX wouldn't be here without NASA. It was NASA's funding. True. It was NASA's funding that got SpaceX here in the first place. So
nothing makes me more happy when they're together. When they're working together, there's nothing that makes me more happy. It's like I don't know. It's like your 2 friends that are friends. It's the best thing ever. Thank you so much for being here.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode about space journalism. Be sure to check out our websites, spacecareers.org and spacecareers.uk for all the latest careers information and updates on the space world. Be sure to join me Thursday at 5 in 2 weeks' time. Bye, everyone.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.